out of executive session. Just have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any corrections or additions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Very good. Steve, or Mike, I don't know how you want to get going on this.
We've got two sort of housekeeping things. These were the, do we have more copies? Or did you hand out all the
No,
copies?
I all went down there.
They're down there?
One of each.
They're the ones I have in
Yeah.
this way, so he...
Okay.
No,
Two tentative agreements that we had discussed last session. One dealt with the national board certification, and I've revised the contract language so that it will provide for individuals to be paid their expenses upon completion of each component of the national board certification process. You can look at, tinker with that wording if it was trying to follow what I could get from their webpage as to how they define stuff. And then the other one dealt with the meeting minutes and agenda. The current language is that those would be sent, and we agreed that it could be done via email. And then the other was that appointment of a supervisory committee, and you agreed to have that eliminated from the contract. So those are.
And then was the third one was the postings, was that, and Ed was gonna check on that, or just like you guys were saying that wasn't gonna be
I thought the agreement was we were gonna leave the postings as was, because we like.
What I
because you
understood
guys-
was that
You send
language
paper
is not
copies, and
changing.
that's what we
Okay.
like that.
Perfect.
Yep.
We're good.
Okay. And then, Stephanie, do you have copies?
Yeah.
And Tim, you must have taken my copy.
I probably did.
Oh, wait a minute, I've got it right here. You have a proposal regarding the stipend at the CDC. Stephanie had mentioned last session that
Okay.
there might be ability to agree to a higher stipend, but some other changes would be needed.
Okay.
And so here is that proposed language. And I'm sure you'll need to caucus on that. Then
We had two other things that we were going to discuss. One was the time for the elementary school teachers. Ed was going to try to get people together. It was vacation week, and it was just too darn hard to do,
Yeah.
so we really didn't do it. And we are working on the personal injury thing that I don't think we have anything definite to report. Is that right, Steve?
well, I have something.
Okay. I'm wrong.
Okay. The,
Are we on the CDC thing? Is that what we're talking about right now?
No.
Or are we talking about the
I-
personnel? So this we're gonna read through.
Right.
And it's
Yes.
This we're
Gotcha.
taking with us, okay.
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 And those other two, if you agree with them,
Yep, she
you might
signed
want to
them,
discuss it, we could sign it, and then those.
And then I'll see that you get signed copies. And you,
I've been getting.
Okay.
yeah, good. Okay, on the injury issue, and I have reviewed this with my wife, who has had some discussions with special ed folks here in looking at that. Right now, there is a process that exists, and it's not clear that people are aware of it or are following it, okay? But a classroom teacher has a right to request an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting anytime a classroom teacher has a concern about a student in their room. And the IEP team is either they're obligated to meet or to provide a reason why there will not be a meeting. Okay? But my understanding is that when classroom teachers ask for IEP meetings, they are typically scheduled. So if a classroom teacher believes they have a student in their room, and let's say it's a situation that the student has on a couple occasions, not just once, either hit a teacher, spit at a teacher, something like that. The student leaves the room for the day, but then it may be back the next day, and the teacher doesn't feel like they're engaged in the process of deciding what is happening with these students. The process that should be followed or could be followed is for that classroom teacher to let either the building principal or the case manager, special education case manager, say, I want to have an IEP meeting to review this child's behavior management plan and how these issues are going to be dealt with going forward, because I'm not comfortable that there's an adequate process or plan in place. That meeting occurs, and then the behavior management issue is reviewed, and the classroom teacher is provided an opportunity to express their concerns, to be informed of exactly what that behavior management plan is, how it is to be implemented, what actions are to be taken. And so that's the process that exists as a matter of law right now. And under the special education law is really the process that should be followed to see that these issues are dealt with. Because if there's inappropriate behavior occurring in the classroom with a student on an IEP, the IEP team needs to be on top of that. And if it cannot be adequately addressed through a behavior management plan in the classroom, then the IEP process is one that begins to look at, do we need an alternative setting for this particular child? If we cannot control or address these behaviors in the classroom, maybe we need to be separating this child, from a regular classroom placement. So that's what we would not support putting the language in that you have requested, because this is something that actually exists as a matter of law. And we're not aware that there have been requests for IEP meetings that have been ignored. Now, that's what I've been told.
And I think you are right. I think sometimes the timing of the IEP meeting becomes part of the problem. And when that IEP meeting can't happen for a week, can we just, so-and-so's going to come back.
Yeah, because where is the student? Well, we're waiting to set up that IEP meeting. Where is the student?
Well, the student is going to be in the student's placement unless, because we cannot remove a student from a regular placement for a period of longer than 10 days without that being a formal change in placement. So there can be temporary removal, but not a long-term removal.
Right, and I would say, most IEP meetings can be set up within 10 days. That's certainly fine, but and jump in and correct me, what we're finding is the teachers say, Johnny's hitting, kicking, whatever, getting carried out of the classroom, and then is back the next day and nothing's changed. That's not okay.
And it is against, and we know there's a process in place, and there's
right.
but the teacher can request it, but then the actual follow-through of said meeting, it's administrative in nature, and some administrators do a fantastic job of getting on it and say absolutely not, and some do not. And I think some of the it's the teachers who kind of are at their wits' end and really feel like the administration is not 100% backing them. One of the reasons why we were looking to add it into the contract was just to have a little bit of kind of the backing of the union or the contract itself. I know you're saying it's against the law and it's in the the regulations and in the process, but that's where we're at. I think this isn't the first time that we've asked to get it into the contract. And I think it just allows for a little bit of comfort in the teacher to know that they're not, they're not feeling that they're asking for something that is not above and beyond what they should. I don't know if anybody else.
I just want to say one thing is, we're not talking about just classroom teachers. We're talking about special ed teachers too. What about them? I'm the case manager. So if I get attacked by a student and I call an IEP meeting, what's going to happen is we're going to look at the behavior plan if there is one, or create one, and then we go back to the same system we had. And we have to collect all of this data for months and months and months, and this kid is still hurting people or themselves. And we have to collect all that data before we can get to an alternative placement. And I mean, so in the meantime, you're still getting hurt. The child's not getting what they need. And so you can seclude them for up to 10 days. Well, what's that going to do for the child?
Right.
And what's that do for us? But it seems like in this situation, you tell your administration and they go, oh, okay, you got bit. Great, you know? But it's not just the biting, it's the emotional that you carry with it. And then the worry that every day when you're working with that child, they're going to do it again and again. And then you don't have that relationship that you want to have with the child because you're scared.
Nelson, you had something to add?
Yeah, I guess what is it that you expect to change if wording was added to the contract that basically says policy and procedure have to be followed? You know, basically you're looking at the statute that's written by the state.
I guess they want follow through. Like
Right,
if
it
I
gives
go
the
to my
teachers-
administrator, I want follow through. I
But-
want somebody to help with the situation. I don't want to hear, you got that, okay.
And I understand that, and I agree with you. That's what's necessary. But what I'm hearing is that the lack of the administrator to follow through is the problem here. That's what it sounds like
I
to
think
me.
within the contract, like, it's easy for teachers at times when they feel maybe contractual language is not being followed to file agreements, to get the backing of the
Right.
union and say, this is not happening. I don't know that everybody feels that they have that ability, and maybe they do, and we're just not aware of it, to like be able to say, guess what, this is against the regulations or the policies of the,
Yeah, I believe that if you have a legal standings, it's obvious if somebody doesn't follow that, you as a collective bargaining unit have that power today to say you're not following statute. You know, I assume there's other things in the policy that refers to state task force when it comes to teachers, and it's not written out every time for every one of those. So what I see is you're not following statute, and then the other process I see, if the administrator isn't doing it, is the school board aware of it not being followed through, and are they not doing anything? But there seems to, I know it takes time for all that stuff, but the justice system takes time, sometimes
Right.
for years.
Right.
The real thing is what you want to do is, if you got a 10-day thing, you meet with the person. If he doesn't do anything, I wouldn't wait 10 days, I would perk it up even higher.
Right. And I guess that's and maybe Steve, you can, from a legal perspective, chime in, but I think the rationale for putting the language in the contract is not like to try to get a solution or something, but for the teaching staff to have that, and if it's not being followed, I can grieve it. I can use the union to say, okay, this is not happening. Let's kind of work it through. Can you grieve something as just a teacher of something that's not in a contract? That's just a policy that you don't think is being followed, or is and that's why we're looking to get it added, to actually have a little bit of that the teacher doesn't feel they're on an island by themselves and have to deal with the problem. When you have an administrator who, oh, no, we've done what we can, or, you know,
Or we're waiting for this.
We're within the law, yeah. So I think that's where we're at, is we're just we're not looking to solve the problem. This doesn't solve any problems. It just gives a little like peace of mind, I think, to say that the teacher's not in it themselves. I think that's what.
I have a question. Well, where does the unions stand in when one single teacher has a complaint or issue like this against policy? Where does the union, how representative are you as a union for that person?
I mean, I would have Amy could speak up on.
Well, I guess when you
that.
say, because I don't see that, you
Do
said
you have a role?
against,
Do you have a role in that type of issue?
I guess I'm not, you said when a teacher has something going against policy, because I don't look at this as going against the current special ed policy. We certainly would never try to do that. What, as Mike said, we're trying to do is if the current policy is not being followed, the teacher doesn't have any leg to stand on currently. I mean, like I can
Not
say.
even with the union?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's the generic unsafe working environment. There's a clause in here, but it's pretty generic. So we're just looking to make it more specific to, because we're seeing more and more.
So if this incident happens, do you follow that guideline as a union to represent that person with the administration?
Yes, we have done that.
And the outcome is?
Has not been positive, because if the administration doesn't see it as such as, you know, well, it was, you know, she just got hit, or it's not, you know, it didn't break my skin, or it didn't, you know, it's, because we're not talking injuries that are sending teachers to hospitals. That's a different thing. But to get smacked every day, or even once a week by a student, is not a working environment that teachers should be left in. You know, so I guess that's where, so we're looking to put this into then to better support the teachers, to make it more clear, you know, because the OSHA requirements is more like, tends to fall more into my air conditioner's spitting out germy stuff, as that being an unsafe work environment, other than a student, you know.
So,
Did I answer your question?
No,
Okay.
because I would think it would fall within that purview.
Well, when we took it forward 2 years ago, it didn't.
You filed a grievance?
Yes. I think it was it done, okay, I think it was 2 years ago. So that's kind of where this arose, that we'd like something more specific.
so what I see is the real problem with what you're requesting. You know, in terms of, you're saying that if, and I'll take, you know, at the face value that you request an IEP meeting, you participate in that, you make recommendations, and the child returns to the classroom, but the behaviors continue. And you're looking at, okay, you need to be able to grieve that, okay? Which I can't envision how that can be anything other than the grievance process is going to supersede the IEP process. And that can't happen. In other words, we're not going to cannot, as a matter of law, be in a situation where a classroom teacher, a special educator is participating in the IEP process. That IEP process concludes that this is what's going to happen. And the classroom teacher says, well, that's unsatisfactory, so now I'm going to ask an arbitrator to propose a change in this student's placement and supersede the federal law IEP process. That's not going to happen. And it's that IEP team that makes those determinations, and by law has to make those determinations. And what you're describing is, in fact, a more significant problem, if it in fact is occurring that way, than just and I say just but a grievance issue. As you described, is this child being properly served? Not just the teacher, but is this child being properly served? And if not, that is a violation of the special education law, which has to be addressed through the special education process. And so, and I understand that these determinations by IEP teams are frequently difficult with, children who have behavioral problems. And I also recognize that in many situations, it's to some extent a trial and error process, because you have to begin with what are the least restrictive approaches, and as behaviors continue, that provides the justification to move to more restrictive behavior approaches. So, but that is the process.
Can I just make a point of clarification? I just want to point out that not all students who hit or spit or throw are in special ed.
Right.
So there are students who don't fall within that purview, and then it's even more ambiguous as to.
Well, actually, if they're not in special ed, that student should be falling under the district's standard disciplinary policy for student behavior, and it then becomes an issue with the building administrator and ultimately the school board addressing what happened to that student. And if there is a non-special ed student, routinely engaging in those behaviors, that can provide justification at some point, if it continues, for expulsion from school. So there is a process to deal with that is actually less cumbersome than the special education process.
Right.
I want to address some of this. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's not just teachers either, it's paras.
Oh, actually, I think the paras have it much worse.
Yeah, they
Honestly.
do. My wife was a para there for 10 years, and she had stuff thrown at her, told her to get screwed and everything else, and a lot of disrespect. But we have had some administrators that don't do their jobs, and I know exactly what she's saying. Well, she said something, my wife used to do that too, and the kid was in the classroom the next day doing the same damn thing. So I think you have a problem. I don't think you should be scared to speak up to your administrator. I don't know if any of this stuff comes to the superintendent or not, but it probably ought to if you've done this 2 or 3 times. If you're afraid of having your job threatened or they're going to discipline you in some way, that shouldn't be either. You can fire the administrator. I mean, get them the hell out of there. If that's what's happening. It sounds like it's still happening and nothing's going to come of it anyway.
Well, I think it's the whole process. I don't think it's like one principal or one person. I think it's the whole process. So say like a child bites you, and you go to the nurse and you say, look, it's not recorded. You don't fill out any paperwork.
Yeah.
Then you go to your principal. Then like for in my instance, I'm the case manager, so I'll say, we better have a meeting because, this can't continue. Well, then we have a meeting, and really, like everybody's saying, you got to look at it, you got to develop a behavior plan if there's not one already in place. If there's one in place and nothing's changing or working on it, then you got to revise it. Well, in the meantime, all of that, you could be getting attacked every day.
Right.
And at that point, you don't like your job anymore. You don't want to come to work. You're going to use those sick days and personal days because you're like, I'm not going. I'm not going to deal with that today. So if the district can't outline something that is right and that we can follow besides if it is a child on an IEP. If it's not, well, then everybody in this district should have something, right down to everybody. And everybody should be able to look at it and say, okay, if I go to this person and they don't really listen to me, then I'm gonna go to this person and I'm gonna do this. That has to be out there. We don't have that right now. So that's why the teachers, everybody wants some protection of some sort, because it's like, your wife knows. She, I'm sure you heard the stories every day.
Oh, I heard a lot of stories.
Yeah, and
I read a book.
and it's really, it gets to you.
Yeah.
And it's,
Well, and also if the kid realizes there's no consequences, they're back in the damn classroom the next day or within the hour. What the hell have you done? Nothing.
And you know
So
what?
it stays
The
the
other
same.
kids in the classroom are now held hostage almost. And they have to deal with this day in and day out. Is learning happening? No.
Steve,
that's an
does any contract you know of, like in the state, does any have a and maybe this is too all-encompassing, but are there contracts in the state that deal with like assault or deal with teacher wellness within the contract, or have you not? Is this like the first thing that you've ever seen of?
I won't say it's the first time I've seen
Yeah.
it, but I have not seen it in contracts.
So to answer your question, it's section 814 is what we have. I mean, there is language there that says teachers shall not be required to work under unsafe or hazardous conditions or to perform tasks which endanger their health, safety, or well-being. And that says, in the VOSHA and OSHA are targeted in that. So it's there, but it's rather generic. I'm not, so maybe we just simply need to invoke this.
Isn't there a school policy on adults?
Maybe we just need to invoke this more often.
Jim, isn't there a school policy on this?
That is the one that.
Students attacking, we have 5065, which is verbal or physical assault on an employee, and then 5050, which is discipline of pupils, suspension, expulsion of pupils, both of which seem to give pretty wide latitude to the principals. But now, again, the question I keep hearing is, are they doing it?
Right.
Well, and expulsions need to go before the school board, so is it fair, can I just ask if, as the school board member sitting here,
We've
paperwork,
had some, but very little.
paperwork for a kindergartner comes before you for expulsion because of, and it's all documented, and there's the laundry list of, this is not time one, what the principal has tried, what the teacher has tried, what the, has ever has tried. Are you all willing to sign off on that expulsion?
Each case would be handled different, but I would be sure that the parents were in front of me when I was discussing that issue.
Yeah.
Because that's what we'd need. If you're willing to say yes to this, then I think then we're good. We'll just use 814 and we're good to go.
Well, we also have to use the policies.
I understand that, but I'm saying policy's been followed. Student has been given
Could you give me
chances
the policy numbers
X, Y,
again?
and Z.
5065
Yes.
is verbal physical assault of an employee, and then the next step would be 5050, which would be the discipline of pupils, suspension, and expulsion of pupils.
Because 814 does talk about the endanger the health, safety, and well-being, which is what we're talking about, health, safety, well-being. We just specified the health, safety, well-being with punching, biting, kicking, scratching, all the specifics. So, I mean, if 814 and that mental and physical well-being of a teacher, if that's what can be, if we hear of it and it's brought forward and this is not, we can go back to the policies themselves as well, have they been followed, then we're fine not having I can caucus and we can talk about it, not having the specifics if 814 is gonna cover the general idea of health and well-being of the teaching staff and paraprofessional staff, because I think
Right.
they're on the front lines.
They're on the front
a lot of the
So
time.
perhaps what you're saying is you want to include the word paraprofessional, and then you also want to.
They have their own contract. They have,
Okay.
this clause is
So-
in their contract.
All right, so that you want to also include the reference to the policies.
In 814, But, I mean, with the contract, we wouldn't necessarily be identifying policies, I don't think, within, because they changed it, like, those numbers can change or adjust in a
Eight fourteen
policy.
is pretty all-encompassing. If you do
It is,
realize-
that's what, it's very, very broad, which is why we were kind of trying to like, just say, and in this specific instance, teachers just need a leg to stand on.
Okay, well, we could go on with this,
Okay.
but let's,
Yep.
I don't know if it's agreeable to everybody, we'll go back and discuss it and see if we can.
And we'll talk about it.
We'll talk a little bit about it and see if we can move on. I know we've got other issues.
I mean, and I will say, I'm not aware of there having been a grievance filed under 814 for this type of situation. So, I'm not saying a grievance can't be filed, I'm just saying I'm not aware that one has
I think,
been.
I just want to say something. I think a lot of teachers won't go through with the process because they know it's not going to go anywhere. So they won't do it. So it really needs to come from the board and the district that we're gonna follow through on these policies if that's what we're gonna do. Because I know a lot of teachers will say, I'm not gonna do anything, nobody's gonna listen.
But I think with the teachers, I think the administrator, I mean, I think you bring, Francis brings up a good point, saying that, like, it's the administrator, I mean, that's where it can stop.
That's
right
and
there,
that's where the
you know,
teachers are
and-
saying, I'm not going to that person, I'm
Because
not
you
gonna.
can't continue the
you know.
process if,
Yeah.
Right.
you know,
In fact, my wife stopped being a parent because she got sick of the kids.
which is a
And then she
shame.
was abused, but I think that's just a culture that is probably in every school and nobody talks about it, so.
And I don't think it's in our job description either.
I'm sure it's
To
not.
get hit and kicked?
Yeah,
You
I
sure?
didn't think it was
It's in between the lines.
Oh, is it?
All right, moving on. What do you guys have?
We had another question, and I forgot to follow up with Ed to see if we had any more information about this, or with Jim. Was this the Castleton course situation and reimbursement of course fees and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
we, again, some of the key people this week that we needed to talk to. We already have, with the math programs, an arrangement with Castleton where those courses are delivered and credits are delivered by Castleton. But I think we would have to discuss what programs would be approved and why we wouldn't approve more than one program. I mean, Castleton is one name, happens to be here, but there's a number of other education schools. And the purpose of that was so we would not have to go through, it would kind of be in a pre-approved school.
Right.
That we could then pay out before the course.
Right, I mean, I think we were looking to say, can we have a school, like, because there are pre-approved courses, can we essentially have a pre-approved university or a pre-approved school, that if you're going to take the course on that, it would be fronted. Obviously, you'd have to show your paperwork
right.
that it's been completed. If you don't complete it within such and such time, then that money is taken out of your, paycheck or whatever, it's like you owe the money.
One issue is it's always hard to collect. We have teachers or parents who are here, don't reside at the end, they leave in September, October, and they owe us back insurance money because we fronted it. It's a nightmare to try and get that back. So it's not something that's easy to do. Also, I don't know the tax impact because a lot of this has tax benefits both to the people taking courses and to the school providing it. And I don't know if they have any rules about when it has to be paid. So I'm going to make a note and go back to Renee and finance and say, what are the rules about paying for education? And if it's a reimbursement, is it treated differently than an upfront payment? And how does all that work? Because I think on an upfront payment, that's immediately taxable.
Are you talking about an upfront, sorry, are you talking about an upfront payment to the employer, or
Yeah.
just, I thought that you were proposing?
We're asking that the school be paid.
That the school be
Not the,
paid.
not the employee.
That would be, you
Oh.
couldn't, if,
Right.
it would be a
We're
taxable
asking,
event if there
right, we're
was-
asking that the school be paid,
Right.
so that I don't have to write them a check and then you write me back a check. You just
You're
write the
talking
check
about
to the
reimbursing.
school.
I
You're
wasn't
paying.
understanding.
And there are
Right.
other districts have that as a, that exists elsewhere.
Can you tell me what
We use
I
it.
can get in touch with them?
Not deduct
I'll find out.
from, if someone doesn't pay a complete the course.
their wage.
Yeah, we can't garnish somebody's wages
For that.
to collect that. Unless they willingly sign off to allow us to do that, but we can't automatically do.
Even if that was part of the language here, because we certainly would not object to contract
Pretty sure
language
you
for that.
can't gouge because
I
you
mean-
earn that money. It's a separate thing.
It's a penny versus earned if you're gonna pay the school directly.
Okay.
One of the things, I guess,
And I'll
is
talk-
different than what they have in the contract, but have we as a school district worked with any colleges to have discounts for teachers taking courses? You know, where I work, there's certain places I go and I get discounts. Everything from car dealerships to schools.
I know the central, or the central office does a good job has that going with Castleton, but it's when they offer the course.
But I'm saying when I make an agreement that
Right, that'd be great too.
you
'cause then I could.
show your credential and you get a cut rate.
Yeah,
Versus us trying to figure out how to pay ahead, you
Right.
could save.
that would be wonderful.
Okay. Yep.
Let's take a look at some of the biggies.
So, I guess the next thing on my list is if you have a response to our health insurance proposal.
So we, with the vacate, we're in the same boat as you guys. We have talked about it. I can say that it took us a little while to sort it out because it wasn't. Your proposal was not under the same terms as you had asked us to propose, you know? So, all of a sudden it was like we were moving and then it was a different ballgame. The premium percentages were different. You had asked us to kind of, I believe in the beginning, come with a set amount of premium, and then you shifted on that. You had asked us to talk about out-of-pocket expenses with a $250 and a $500, and then you shifted on that as well. So I think there was a lot for us to digest, and we talked about it a little bit before break. We brought in some other people's opinions, and we talked a little bit more today about it. I don't have something in writing to give to you all today, but I will email it before the end of this week, just to everybody, so you guys can all, or do you want me just to email it to you?
Just why
Tim?
don't you just send it to Steve?
Or Steve?
Yeah, Steve
So-
will add,
Yeah.
yeah, then make sure.
So I'll email it, like a counter, but we're close, we're coming back, but I don't feel that everybody's on board with it
Okay,
right now.
Are there any parts of that proposal that we could explain more? We did say that we were attempting to keep our costs the same as they were last year. We wanted to be sure that the members of the association didn't have a potentially large increase. We wanted to take into consideration the factors that you brought in terms of somehow or other taking into our proposal what would happen if rates increased, and also what would happen if deductibles had some sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we tried to do, in this proposal, we tried to address all of those issues.
I think I think the language is getting clearer for us in terms. I think we're talking in the same language. I think for us right now, it's looking at all four plans and having the staff be able to choose the plan that works best for them, and not really making one plan look so much better than all the other plans is one of my our goals going forward. I may be wrong, and I've been wrong before, but I mean, to me, you guys have said, all four plans are the same. It's how they are paid out. and how those are, like how much costs are going to be in premium, how much out-of-pocket expenses, whether you're doing a copay or a percentage, and so on
The coverage in
and
each of
so
those
forth.
plans is exactly
It's
the same.
exactly the same.
And it's actually more, it's a broader coverage than the plan that you have right now.
Yes.
And out of state, in state, all those sort of things are incorporated.
Right. And so each family will have to decide whether or not, like the gold plan or the gold CDHP plan would be better, for them, or the silver CDHP plan versus the gold CD, and vice versa. We're trying to say, find the plan that works best for your family. I now know, and I was talking to these guys, that if you are going to max out on out-of-pocket expenses, then take the one. If you know you're going to max out on, then you take the one that costs the least. That makes the most sense. But if you think that you're not going to like max out and you want to kind of, I'll pay less in premiums, I'll do this, and it's going to be a chance, and I know Nick talked about this the last time, that there's a 6-month period the first time where you get, it's kind of a chance to see if you chose the right plan or not. But that's what we're trying to look at. Can we, again, be fair to the board, be fair to our members, and allow them to choose the plan that works for them, and not essentially say, this is really one of the only options for you. Going forward, I think we have a couple of things, and I don't think there was anything that we didn't understand from what you presented. I think some of the assertions, or I don't want to say assertions, some of the kind of the numbers themselves, like you guys were using both the dual option and the zero comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really, for us, I know that we're locked in, majority, I think 85% or so are in the dual, not in the zero comp. So I'm using those numbers as our kind of go-to. And I think we're going to be closer, and I think our counter is going to be played off of kind of what you guys had did. So I don't think, did anybody else have any specific questions, or yeah.
What the things that we tried to do on this was percentages.
Yep. Yes.
Is what you wanted.
Yes.
The other thing was the HRA.
Yes.
Was there anything else that was key that we should be looking at with this, or do you think that we've approached it to meet?
Just off the top of our head, right now, I know we didn't want an HSA, even though it was an individual savings account, because all 4 plans couldn't use it, and we thought we'd be hamstringing some of our members and we can only take these 2 plans. With the HRA going forward, that's essentially your money. So you get to keep what isn't used at the end of that. So one of the things, and we'll put it in our proposal going forward, but we're not sure why the association should pay the fees for an HRA when it's your money, your stuff, you keep it at the end. So that's a little thing, but that, the HRA, I know we want it, but it's essentially the board's, pot of money to get, not a big deal at all. And that's an easy, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, for us, and then it's figuring out where that percentage is and where the out-of-pocket costs line up. And I think that's where we're at right now. What is fair for us and fair for you, in that, we're at about where we were this year, and you guys are about where you were this year, and that's what we're looking at. So
There, I don't know, Steve, did you want to just go over those couple of contracts that we know that have been solved, let people know, or don't you think that's appropriate?
They're just tentative, or
No,
have any been signed, or, oh good, I didn't want to be the first one, that was good. So.
Maybe don't, maybe don't.
That's really why we're holding out. We
Yeah.
just don't want to be first.
Now, there are, to the best of my knowledge right now, 4 contracts that have been resolved. I don't know if the final document has been signed, but they have announced that they have tentative agreements, and they've announced the terms of the tentative agreements. And these are mainly more in the northern part of the state, not down in this part of the state. And the terms of them are different, although there are a number that are basically coming in and saying we're going to do 80-20 premium split based on the CDHP goal, and you can take any plan you want, but your reimbursement will be based on 80% of the CDHP gold premium. Most of them have an HSA component that involves some sort of employer-employee contribution to an HSA. The out-of-pocket, in most cases, it's a flat dollar limitation on the employer's contribution for out-of-pocket, which generally is something that is not going to cover 100% of out-of-pocket for the platinum or the gold plan. It gets closer to covering out-of-pocket for the CDHP gold and silver. When you match up the dollars that the employer is contributing in these various settlements, it's fairly consistent that the dollar contributions are about the same as, or maybe less than, what their FY17 dollar cost would be. So that, again, in terms of a methodology or similarity to what we have proposed, we've tried to match things to what our FY17 dollar costs are. That seems to be where these settlements are coming in. It's just they are using different ways of dealing with the out-of-pocket expense.
Right.
So whether it's an HRA or HSA.
Right. And I think that's where, as I said, I think it's getting closer, and it's now like we're whittling down. So I feel that it's as I said, we were pretty close today. I think we had a good discussion, and I just have some fine tuning to do, and then I'll get that to you. I'll get that to Steve, and then he can distribute it out, and I'll just explain it a little, give it a little write-up as a.
I have a question, maybe this isn't appropriate to ask, but as you probably know, the legislature has been considering having a statewide insurance program that would cover all the municipal employees, teachers, and everybody else. I don't know how you've been following that, but the governor has reinstated it. I mean, he was originally, I hope I have this right, originally it was proposed, then it was kind of let slide, and then it was brought up again. Is that about right, Steve? Or?
Yeah, it's that.
I don't think it's going to go.
No, this legislative session, but basically, the governor believes that there is approximately $28 million worth of savings that can be realized if the state would take over and come up with a basically uniform proposal on health insurance. And the state would basically negotiate or whatever, but it would take the health insurance component out of local negotiations. And
I'd be fine with it right now, about the time I put in here. Thanks for telling me.
And as I say, the governor believes that the state could come up with a plan and put it in place that would save $28 million, roughly $28 million on a statewide basis. I think it's very late in the legislative session for this to happen, but I think that there continues to be interest in that happening this legislative session, and if the governor can get together with Democrats, it's something that may happen, and in which case the proposal is that it would become effective immediately, and so any contracts that are not settled would then be subject to this new law. And
the pace that the legislature goes, I think we'll have some time, but
Well, the chief
Yeah.
opponent to it, I'm sure, as you wouldn't be surprised, is
Yeah.
your organization, NEA.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see all the I mean, there's things stalled in the legislature all the time. It's not, so, I don't know. I hadn't heard about it, so I'll have to do some reading.
If you go to, do you go to Digger, Vermont Digger and all?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's in Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
The things that I've heard from various legislatures, and I've sent some emails to some today, one of the things that's going to save this money is what the goal is, but one side wants to spend it one way and one wants to spend it another.
Right.
If anything stalls anything up there,
That's it, yeah.
they're done.
Yeah. Everyone's got their ideas. Was there anything else that, like, you guys were gonna, I know you didn't do any of the in-service stuff either. Were you gonna reach out to Laura, Ed? Was that gonna be part of, on the professional development stuff?
Yeah,
Good.
she was limited availability
Yep.
last week.
And we'll read through, we'll do a caucus. Was there anything else that you guys?
Not really. We've
I mean, what, we were hoping to see where we were on health insurance today, and then what we see as the next big item that we need to deal with is salary, but we really don't want to take that up until we know where we are on health insurance, because it's a lot of dollars involved in health insurance.
So can we put, if I, again, we'll present you the, our counter proposal for the health insurance, Wednesday, Thursday of this week, can, like, for our next meeting, which is
The
the
8th of May.
8th, can you guys bring, whether you want to, like, respond to that, like, health insurance, but see where we're at. Again, one of the things that we're looking at is relative, I mean, the numbers are pretty close. I mean, it's not, I'm not counter proposing like way off, they're pretty consistent with what you guys had proposed. So, but, I mean, obviously take a look at it and see, but then maybe from there, you can have a better idea of the salary,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable goal from what you're saying to look at, possibly resolving health insurance next time and having an initial discussion.
Right.
Or maybe even a final discussion of salary.
Yeah.
We're working on, I don't want to make any statements that I would have to retract, but we certainly are anxious to do what we can about increasing the starting salary. We want to be able to attract the best and brightest of the young students.
Yep.
Financially it makes sense, and it makes sense all the way. And we want to be sure that, that our compensation package for those employees who have been with us a long time isn't considered. So
Yep.
in vague terms, but basically we want to do something for those beginning salaries.
Did we discuss prep time?
Oh, elementary school, like, was that coming back with the
Yeah, well,
the language?
the elementary school, that's what I said earlier, they
Okay.
weren't able
I
to
knew
meet
s-
because they were on vacation.
I
But
knew
Ed had
that.
scheduled some meetings, and I'm sure he'll have to do that in the future.
I did hear you, and then I couldn't remember what you said, so
I mean,
thank you.
Probably
so
wasn't clear.
still, like, we'd love, I mean, we'll read through, we'd love clarification still on the, professional days, like the calendar, and then, like, and again, our big piece is this ongoing professional development that is not necessarily tied into this many days, this many, but can the language be hours instead of days so that there's some flexibility in how it's delivered and how it's.
We had talked earlier about having Laura meet with some people, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Jim, you could get that organized so that, I don't think that, we're certainly not opposed to changing it and taking a good look at it and having it to be the most productive that we can.
And I know my discussions with her, she would prefer some half-days too, but
Right.
the problem, as we discussed before, is that doesn't deduct the total amount of days that teachers need to work to meet the contractual obligation. So if we do a half-day school and half-day professional development, which everyone seems to agree is good for the continuity of what we're doing, because one, it's difficult to plan a whole day of professional development, and then there's not enough of them.
Right.
They're spread too far apart.
Right.
Yeah,
We
you
all
can't
agree on
carry
that.
learning from
continuity,
one
yeah.
to learning to the
So,
next.
But if we do a day like that, then that doesn't count towards the 188 and a half that we have to do. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, we
So
can't
maybe,
double count the
that-
day.
well, then there, and that lies to you to, I mean, that's where the language we need to
Yeah.
change language such that.
If we found something that was agreeable to both parties, I don't want to make a commitment here, but I think the way to start it would be to have Laura and anybody else that Jim felt would be appropriate, meet with some people that, from your group and come up
But it
with
would also
something.
take board discussion to decide what you want to do with those other days.
Right.
Because if we're doing professional development, say during a regular school day, that now counts as a student day.
And a teacher day.
And a teacher day, and the students only go 180 days, and the staff works 188 and a half, what do you do with those other 8.5 days? That's where it's kind of stopped to this point, so.
I'm sure you can think of something to do. Windows, doors.
All right, so I think Laura is the person, I know there is a professional development committee that meets as well, so I think that's
Right,
another.
and I think what I hear Jim saying is that in that sense, we're in agreement what we would like. It falls to the board to decide then, are they agreeable to having those half professional days count towards those 8.5?
Right,
Or do they need to do something else with them?
right. Or those days need to be eliminated.
I need to go into executive session.
And then the elementary school language, I think those are is there anything else that is outstanding that we,
Yeah, I think because we.
so
signed
it's
off.
salary and health insurance, but it's still just the calendar days and the,
Elementary hours.
elementary hours, yeah. And so we'll talk about, the CDC proposal, and then we'll talk about the 22.3, and bring that back to you guys for the next, for the May 8th, which meeting, if that makes sense.
Then do we have one past May 8th?
Well, we ought to do it. How about the 14 and 8 is 22, I
Or
guess.
say 22, or say, do we want to
Yeah,
set the 22?
Let's
Okay.
set the 22nd, which is that, and we'll call that our last meeting.
That's right.
I like it. I'm typing
Put
it
that-
in.
no,
I am
Well, you guys
typing
are
it
gonna
in
be in
now.
school until 1st of July, so.
It feels like that. I'm putting it in, last meeting, done, save. We're all good.
Yes, it will. That's next week.
Yep.
Just wanna make sure.
Yes. All right.
So I guess there's no reason to sort of caucus and return.
No, I think we'll return, we'll caucus now, but we'll return,
Come
like,
back
because
on the
we'll come back on the 8th with it. It's just the CDC thing
Yeah.
we're talking about in the 22.3.
And we'll have that, the two things that we've discussed here. Ed will meet with those people on that.
And you'll have those for the 8th.
On the 8th.
And if at all possible, if you can send something to Mike ahead of time, we can have already talked and
Sure.
come with questions, that's always quicker.
Well, the same thing would be true of the health insurance.
Yep.
Yep,
I'm good like that.
So then
You're very good like that.
we've agreed on the 8th and the 22nd.
22nd.
Yep.
Very good, same time, same station. Are there any further issues before this committee? Entertain a
Move
motion?
to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
like a June.
All those in favor? Thank you.